Jeff, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Jeff, you spent about a decade in Microsoft.
Yep, that's
You
right.
worked in some great companies, and then you decided to start your own business. So talk to me,
Correct.
how did you know that this was the right time to leave the corporate world in which you were quite successful and then start your own venture?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say, I was actually very lucky during my corporate career to work for some really great teams. I started early on in an incubation team on Xbox, did a couple projects with that, did a couple bigger game projects there, stuff like Crackdown 2, Project Spark we shipped, which, pretty proud of that game. It had a lot of cult following, though unfortunately didn't get a lot of commercial success. And then that kind of led me to the HoloLens program, which when I joined, that would have been around 2014. And it was still just a skunkworks project at the company, still kind of envisioned as an Xbox peripheral. So I just kind of happened to know a few folks who were working there and were like, we're working on some really cool stuff. You should, come join us. So I did. I took the leap without knowing exactly what it was, but having a little bit of an inclination. Yeah, it turned out to be the HoloLens project, which was just an incredible device. If you've had a chance to try one on, it's ridiculous. The first time I put one on, it was still back in the early days when it had a separate unit that you had to hang around your neck. We called it the Flava Flav unit. Um, and just being able to see holograms in your space was a mind-blowing experience for me. And I knew immediately that, well, this is the future of computing. This is what I want to be doing with the rest of my career. So fast forward a couple years through that program. And around 2018, Microsoft decided that they were going to start phasing it out. They reorged a bunch of the people that were there. I knew I wanted to leave at that time, so I kind of just let myself end up where they put me, which was like Windows shell, doing, whatever. So, left shortly after that. Um, then, I was trying to figure out what was going to be next for me. So I did a couple other things. I was at Amazon for a couple years. In fact, I moved to Italy just to kind of try something a little bit different. They had an office there in high performance computing. So yeah, went and joined, spent about 2 years. That was actually right when COVID hit. And so that was a really wild experience, being essentially in the red zone in Italy, which was like the first place in the world that was really getting hit with COVID. So nobody really knew what was happening at that time. But overall, it was an incredible experience being there. But at the end of it, I kind of felt like I was missing something that the North American experience kind of brings, like some of the intensity of the work. As much as I love like the people and the food, obviously, yeah, I decided I wanted to come back. So, I still felt this need to be working in immersive technology. And during my time at Amazon, I tried pitching to leadership like, hey, I think this is the future. Like, we need to be building Amazon services that are going to support this stuff. And I kept just getting pushback like, no, it's not what people are asking for. Like, we've got things that we just have to deliver this quarter. You know how it is. So resigned from Amazon, and started looking for where I wanted to do it. Evaluated a few different cities. San Francisco, obviously high up on the list. It's the mecca of where everything happens, but eventually settled on Montreal. It's a smaller ecosystem, but there's a lot of really good government support here for essentially very early stage startups. Which I felt, would be able to help me accelerate this initial period while it's still kind of questionable where exactly we're going. I knew there was going to be a need for multiple pivots probably along this road. And San Francisco is always there, and investors can invest in anything. Now we have a very global workforce. I having lived through that Italian experience, really believe that the best talent is globally distributed, and we have to be able to take advantage of that from anywhere. So, I really embrace the remote work still, in order to try to find people who are the best at what they do. Yeah, so
Mhm.
eventually, now that I've landed here, I set up Solipsa Studios, initially with the mission of helping people to create these mixed reality experiences. So that started in 2023, and we did about a year pursuing that, working on the idea of digital twins of spaces. And we got, pretty close to an MVP working, and we're really kind of going out and shopping it to bunch of potential customers, had the most interest from the real estate sector with that. And
Okay,
really,
Jeff, I'm sorry, I have to stop you because
sure.
w- I mean, for people who are not in the field,
Okay.
mixed reality,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
digital twin.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like futuristic Black Mirror kind of stuff. So can you just break it down what it actually means and how can
Definitely.
companies practically benefit from this?
Right, definitely. So our idea building these mixed reality spaces, these digital twins, the idea is that you have an environment, some kind of physical space, and you want to be able to enhance your understanding of that space digitally. Uh, Today, what people do, so there is this idea of digital twin already, and the existing meaning is really like all of those industrial processes. We want to be able to track the status. So if you're operating an assembly line, you want to know like what are all those machines doing? What's their operational capacity? Like when's the last time they were serviced? All of that data. So that all exists. And what we can do is we can synchronize all of those individual parts to the cloud so that we know the status of the entire assembly line at any given point. In order to further increase the ability to extract useful data out of something like that is using spatial data as well. So, like, not only the status of the machine, but like where exactly it is. And even more than that, like where are the individual components on that machine located? And this is an idea that we started exploring on HoloLens. This is really kind of where that program ended up, is as a tool for industrial use, because it's really beneficial for these frontline workers, people that have this technical proficiency to operate these machines, to be able to get that contextual information at their fingertips immediately. And that's something that, it's been deployed already in some of these big companies, like Boeing was a customer, Toyota is a customer. So they're able to like take those data from their existing sources, add that spatial component, and then once they detect like, oh, there's an anomaly detected on machine 15, like now we can actually have a big sort of video game like pop, like warning sign, pop up over here, like, oh, here's the machine, and actually guide the worker over to it in a safe way, and then provide additional instructions like overlaid on top of that machine, like here's how you actually change this part, so that people don't have to refer back to training manuals that maybe they took the training for this thing like 10 years ago, and they're kind of rusty on it. They have all of that information at their fingertips. Um, so the problem still is that building those kinds of simulations is hard. These were kind of big projects that were like collaborations between like Microsoft engineering teams and engineering teams at these other big companies. So what I wanted to do is to help democratize that, make it easier for anybody to digitize their spaces and start creating these kinds of simulations. And so then that's where I kind of, was leading into like the real estate sector was sort of the most interested in that. So if you're, building a new construction, you want to be able to like start giving people a tour of it, for example, and say like, oh, here is like our display unit. Maybe you kind of build out, one example unit in a show center, and having a digital twin of that unit then gives you the ability to do things like oh, well, actually, we can swap out all the finishes like this, like boop, click a button, and now all of your surfaces are marble, for example. So it gives you just a lot more control over your spaces being fully digital than you would get if you had to build all of this stuff practically.
A lot of questions. I mean, I mean, you've been into this for a while, but for
For
people who
sure.
are listening to this for the first time, there's a lot of questions. I mean, first of all,
Yeah.
what's the level of granularity you can get to? Because you talked about changing parts. Are you saying
Mhm.
that you can be extremely detailed in this
Yep.
digital twin?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're getting more and more precise with what we're able to track on these devices. HoloLens era, we were centimeter accurate in terms of tracking precision. Devices that we have now are getting to be closer to millimeter accurate.
What about the capital required to get started? I mean, you still need a device, and you're talking about democratizing the tech, but can people afford these hardwares in order to even get started?
Yeah, so absolutely. And it really also kind of depends on the use case you're after and who your potential customers are. So for looking at a device like the HoloLens, that's like a $3,500 head computer. So really it's only the big customers that are able to afford any number of those at any kind of scale. But, if you don't necessarily need to have the hands-free aspect of that kind of system, we have the same sensor packages basically in one of these, an iPhone 12. That's going to get you a lot of the way there using just mobile AR kind of experiences. So you can still kind of do the same thing, give people a pretty good representation of that full experience just on a device that they already have in their pocket. So it's totally possible to get started that way. And then, as a company scales, as you want to start providing a more immersive experience, you can start investing into more of the head mounted hardware. And that stuff is coming down in price drastically these days now, too. I think like the Quest 3 is on the market for something like 500 bucks.
What's the most challenging part of being in this field? Is it that people don't really understand the technology? Is it that you have to educate them of the use case, how it's done, the accuracy? Because I mean, for a lot of people, I mean, let's be honest here, people don't know about this as much as they
Yep.
should, probably.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. That's it for sure. It's definitely the education and the perception. There was a whole hype cycle around metaverse stuff for a while, which I think actually hurt the industry more than anything, because that hype cycle really kind of got co-opted by Meta entirely, right? They changed their company name from Facebook to Meta in order to try to ride that wave. And I don't think they were entirely wrong. I think the main issue that we saw with that was simply their ability to execute. Like they were able to see that immersive technology, spatial technology was going to be the future, and they continue investing in it. But at the time, they had just bought Oculus, which was the VR headset maker that was independent. They purchased them, and it became Meta Reality Labs, and so now they make all the headsets internally. But they were still really focused on VR, and there's a tremendous difference between virtual reality and augmented or mixed reality, where I think the latter, mixed reality, is actually a lot more immersive than virtual reality, which sounds almost, like it's counterintuitive. People think, well, in virtual reality, you're fully inside it. But the issue then really is that you are being taken out of your current environment and you're separated from everybody and everything. So when you can put digital content into your physical world that you're looking at and see it as if it was actually there, your brain makes this connection, and that digital content feels much more real to you than if you were in a completely new imaginary environment. And so this is, Meta was really leaning into that VR aspect, and it's only been recently that they've really started to catch up. But so this is, I think, where the term like metaverse originally was this idea that it's simply a layer of information on top of your existing reality, right? It's the meta universe, the metaverse. So, as I kind of described earlier, like we would be able to access that kind of metaverse in industrial applications, in real estate applications, through this digital layer that you can see that has this spatial content to it. So that really was the original idea of the metaverse. Meta really like took it and owned it and tried to like make that a product in VR. And that I think just didn't work. And that's where we got, a lot of people tried their really early versions, had negative reactions to it, and then like the stock of that word just tanked. So now nobody can say metaverse anymore because of that connotation. But that's really sort of the history of it.
So you mentioned real estate, but are you focused on that specific industry, or do you have a wide range of industry that are ready to adopt? Like, how do you look at this?
Yeah, so well, I mentioned that that was sort of the first phase. So we've actually pivoted last year. So taking that concept of modifying spaces and building whatever you want, it started to resonate with people. They were like, "Wow, it's incredible! I can build whatever I want, but I don't know what I want to build." And so really the learning was like, we're still too early for this market. Like, you were saying, it's still, there's so much education. There's still so much like even hardware has to catch up. Like people don't know what they want to do with this kind of experience. So I wanted to kind of go back and take something that I knew worked, that I knew resonated, that I knew could add value in the short term. And where I landed was human interaction. So, 2024, now we're starting to look at AI is becoming the next big trend. People are starting to get onto AI chatbots. And so this periods, there was also my aunt had passed away, which was sort of this event in my family that like I wanted to help my mom with this. And so I started to kind of create an AI chatbot version of my aunt's that my mom could interact with. And she really resonated with that. That really kind of helped her get over that loss. And I was like, that's great. Like that's working. She loves this. Like what, this seems like something that I can help other people with and like something that, things that people might enjoy. So where we are now, we're developing a product called Memitar, which is this digital twins for humans application. So you can really think of it now as kind of character AI, but for mixed reality. So being able to take all of those character interactions and make them into a face-to-face conversation with another virtual person. What we've seen is like the engagement, the immersion in that face-to-face interaction paradigm is much higher than just on a flat panel. And it's, going back to the education portion, like having people kind of grasp that, it is difficult because you'll maybe show people like a video of like, hey, here's this thing that I built, here's what it looks like. And people will watch the video and be like, oh yeah, I've seen that kind of stuff. But as soon as you actually put on a headset and experience it in person for yourself, every single time people are like, oh my God, this is incredible. I never knew it could be like this. And so really that's the challenge of this stuff is like, it's like the Matrix. Like you can't be told what mixed reality is. You really have to see it for yourself.
Jeff, continue your legacy, live in the cloud. Are you are you saying that the future is creating virtual digital twins, virtual clones of people that you can interact with forever that have the same personalities or talk in the same way? Is that where we're heading?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, for sure. We're at that stage now. We already have a proliferation of digital twins and deep fakes, kind of on the more malignant part of the spectrum. And certainly there is a lot of fraught ethical questions around that. But I think, for me, I really want to try to give people the control over their own data and over their own image. Uh, so for me, it's really important to keep pushing into this realm where you can run your own models, host things, self-host things, so that you're not beholden to us necessarily to always be running a personality version of you, if you're creating yourself. And initially, I'm really kind of starting with the entertainment aspect as sort of the first foray into this, because I think that certainly allows for a little more leeway. Targeting existing characters. Like my kind of marquee example is Marvel Studios, right? If you want to be able to launch a new film, you've got like Hugh Jackman being Wolverine again, and you want to have people interact with like that version of Wolverine as portrayed by Hugh Jackman. Well, you can create a digital human, a Memitar version of Hugh as Wolverine. And you can put him in theaters across the country or in people's living rooms, and they can experience that character, the same way that he would appear on the screen. And I think that's really the way that we're going to start seeing this stuff show up is just these kind of conversations, the things that people are already doing a lot with chatbots, just chatting. It's kind of the number one topic on Twitch is just like this social aspect. So I think that's the same place we're going to be starting with digital characters. And as people start to get more comfortable with that idea and it gets to be easier and cheaper to run and host your own AI models, we can start pushing more into that personalization aspect.
Do you want to let people create their own world, or are you trying to build it for them? Like when you say democratizing, are you
Mm.
democratizing the ability to do it themselves, or doing it at a much cheaper cost so that people can actually buy that service?
Yeah. Yeah. So eventually, we want everyone to be able to do it themselves. We're still at the point where it's us doing a lot of the creation. There's still a lot of manual aspects to it. But that's part of the journey is like figuring out where all of those pain points are, creating those automations, and then building that into the product so that eventually it can be completely self-service.
Jeff, I've talked to a lot of founders. This is probably one of the most interesting conversation I've had, and
Oh,
I'm not
amazing,
sure
man. I
I I'm,
appreciate
I'm
that.
I'm not sure I fully understand everything that's going on. I just have so many questions in my head. But fortunately, we're out of time. Just want to say thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated this.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been a blast.